I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Turrbal people and the traditional country in which this event is taking place, and the elders both past and present. I also recognise those whose ongoing effort to protect and promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures will leave a lasting legacy for future elders and leaders. Hello everyone, and welcome to the first Moreton Bay Region Library's Family History Month event. I'm Helen Cossins, the Local Studies Leader, and it's wonderful to have you all joining us online today to hear Bob McAllister from the Strathpine Family History Group talk to us about researching your South African ancestors. Just a reminder, the libraries and local history rooms are now open again. If you aren't already a library member, please see a staff member and join today. It's completely free and will give you access to a lot of online resources, including family history magazines and, for now, Ancestry and Find My Past online. We have more history talks coming up, so please check out the library website for further information. Many of you will know Bob from the Strathpine Family History Group. Welcome, Bob.
Okay, thank you, Helen. It's always a fraught moment when you have to move from one section of a talk to the other to find out whether things are actually going to happen. So if you bear with me for one moment, we'll just start the presentation. And I'll keep talking while we fill the dead air. Here we go. I was almost going to do this before we started, and I thought, no, what happens if I start it and then it stops? So I'm now going to have a shot at uploading and sharing that presentation there, and with a little bit of luck, we're underway. Okay, so first let me give the disclaimer that I'm by no means an expert on researching South African origins or ancestry in South Africa. I got this job by default based upon the fact that I've got quite a bit of experience working with the two genealogical societies, QFHS and GSQ, and dealing with people coming in off the street and saying, I want to research in such and such a country, something that I know nothing about. So I built up some strategies that I hope I can apply to pretty much any country about which I don't know much. And that's what I'm going to show you today. South African origins, of course, we tend to think of South Africa as a European country, rather ignoring the fact that it was the place where the earliest humans came. That in fact, when the Europeans arrived in South Africa, there were societies present there, and that those people are still around today. But for our focus, we're going to be looking at post-European South Africa. And we can pretty much sum up in the 20th century the history of South Africa in its flags. The Union of South Africa in the bottom left, then it became a republic, and finally in the late 20th century the Rainbow Nation. But of course that was only the end of a fairly long and torturous trail. The first flag that Europeans flew over South Africa wasn't that of a nation at all.
Can you hear okay?
This is the flag of the VOC, the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, the United East India Company, which we tend to label the Dutch East India Company to distinguish it from the British East India Company. And here we can see some ships of the VOC lying at anchor under Table Mountain. Interestingly, the Cape Colony and Southern Africa wasn't seen as a destination in its own right. It was simply the best stopping off place on a voyage between Amsterdam and Batavia. So it was a safe harbour, a good place to swap crews, and merely a station rather than a destination. Now, the fact that the Cape was midway between Amsterdam and Batavia also meant that it was midway between Rio de Janeiro and Madras. And that was why in the 1790s, the British Navy sailed into the Cape Colony and said, sorry, VOC, we're in a war with Napoleon at the moment, and this is a highly desirable spot. We'll take it over. Thank you. Which was a curious thing to do because at that stage, Holland and England were supposed to be allies in the war against Napoleon, but needs must when the Royal Navy comes to town. This is a lovely map showing the Cape Colony around the 1790s, the early 1790s, when it was still, rather than a country, a big business. The VOC had spread out over quite a large area. Cape Town itself, Stellenbosch, and a number of smaller villages. There were, in fact, 4 law courts in the area. And the other side, on the left side of the map in the index, it also tells us there were 2, 4, 6, about 8 churches. And interestingly, 6 of them were Dutch Reformed, 1 Lutheran, and 1 was Moravian, hinting at some of the future that was to come when good Church of England sailors suddenly landed. Within a very few years, the VOC flag no longer flew over Cape Town. That flag on the top right is the governor of the Cape Colony, and the first governor was Earl Culloden. Technically, I guess he was an Irishman. His father had an Irish title, but since before he succeeded to the earldom, he was known as Dupré Viscount Alexander. He doesn't sound very Irish to me, but he was the quintessential British civil servant. He'd been the governor of Grenada, the governor of Madras, had reputedly turned down the role of Governor General of India, which was probably not a great career move, and finished up looking after the Cape Colony at a crucial time in the wars against Napoleon. Of course, Cape Colony was only a tiny part of what was to become British South Africa. And here we see the flags that eventually flew over the Cape on the top left, Natal, bottom left, Transvaal, top right, and the Orange River province on the bottom right. But of course, the control by the British was not uncontested. And here we see a number of other flags which flew over South Africa, and significantly the top left is Natalia, the Boer state which existed. Bottom left was called the South African Republic long before there was a Republic of South Africa. It was in fact what we would now call Transvaal. Swap the blue and the green on the top right, and we've got something called Neue Republik or New Republic. Also thrived in Transvaal. Bottom right, the Orange Free State, a most spectacular flag, that one. And in the middle, something which, if I didn't know better, I would say was an Islamic emblem, is in fact the state of Stellaland. So if we take these flags as an indication of dominance and control, there were a lot of them. In the space of 100 years, states came and went. And so it was a highly contested area. This particular flag, a very famous one, was only in official use for a very short time in Transvaal, but it is in fact the Vortrecker flag, the flag flown by the Dutch Afrikaans people who said, right, we've had enough of being British subjects. We're going to head up country and effectively split what we now call South Africa into 2 parts. And things seemed to be going pretty well until someone discovered that, unfortunately, the diamonds were in the orange bit. And that didn't seem like a good idea for the British. And although it was far more complicated than that, this led us to this wonderful image. It looks like something straight out of Boy's Own Adventure, doesn't it? The Great Anglo-Boer War. We tend to forget that the this striking image could be people out camping until you see heading off into the distance the rows and rows of tents. It was at this time that the British Army invented what came to be called, in the not too distant future, concentration camps, places where you could concentrate the competence or the non-competence of the other side in one place. And it was around this time, of course, that South Africa became of interest to Australians, because it was a place where we could go and shoot people. This is the South Australian Mounted Infantry, shortly before they headed off in 1898-99. Interestingly, no emu plumes on their hats, because they were from South Australia, and it was the Queensland Mounted Infantry who brought in the tradition of emu plumes for light horsemen. Now, we could talk for several hours about those factors, but what's all this got to do with family history? We like to imagine that our families are unitary things. All of the factors which shape their decisions are internal, but in fact, all those political factors, economic factors, impinged upon the decisions that our ancestors made to migrate or not to migrate, to leave the family farm and go and work in the gold mine or not, to marry, to have children, to having migrated to South Africa, to leave. All of these issues arise out of those factors, and they shaped our ancestors' lives. Now, most of us are not interested in writing a comprehensive history of Southern Africa under colonial influence. But we do need to think about, if we're researching births in Transvaal in 1860, who was in control of Transvaal in 1860? Who were the dominant churches? How safe did our families feel? So consequently, a key part of understanding our South African ancestors is to look at the factors which shape their lives. Now, as I say, we don't want to spend the whole talk on that, so I'll leave it at that, but on the way through the rest of the talk, I'll mention a number of places where you can obtain information. Now, we all know that we're supposed to conduct family history research in an organised way with a plan and a log of everything we do, and we all positively subscribe to that view. But we also know that the most amazing moments are when you're wandering through a repository, you look over someone's shoulder and you see a fabulous record, say, how on earth did you get that? And so I couldn't resist the opportunity of showing you this, which I found. It's some sort of an account book from the 1790s. It relates to a ship, and in fact, it's part of the salaries paid to crew members by the VOC, the United East India Company. The site on which I found it very conveniently offers a transcription. However, as you can probably guess, the transcription up in the top left is in Dutch. I spent a moment running that through some translation software, which I'll mention later, to find out that what we have here is the record of one Hendrik Blom of Rotterdam, who joined the VOC in November of 1792. His job function was boy, and as the transcript explains, explanation of function, under 17 years of age, did all kinds of jobs. He sailed on the ship And I suspect that that is a transcription error, but I haven't yet tracked down whether that IJ probably should be a Y. It then tells us that in March of 1794, Hendrik Blom left the company. The last line there in the Dutch simply says last record. Whether he died, decided being at sea wasn't for him, I don't know. A fascinating thing, but how did I get it? Well, I grabbed that from the National Archive of the Netherlands, which has the archives of the VOC, thousands of crew records. Well, what on earth led me there? Well, a link here from the EGSA, the virtual branch of the Genealogical Society of South Africa. How did I find that? I got to that from here, which is the most amazing collection categorized of records relevant to South African genealogy online. And how did I get to that? Well, I found that in Family Search. And the next part of our talk is going to be how I hope you can set yourself up to make the same sorts of discoveries. Oh, but I couldn't resist one more image from that fantastic archive, and that one would be a real challenge to sort out. Particularly, you'll notice that while the VOC was nominally a trading company, his function on board the ship was soldier in the military division. So different type of merchanting. So let's move on and have a look at the Research Wiki. The Family Search Research Wiki, a vital tool for researchers in South Africa, or for that matter, anywhere else. Unfortunately, for something that's so wonderfully valuable, Family Search makes it incredibly difficult to find. If you simply open up your Family Search account, there's no obvious place that says go to the wiki. It is in fact hidden under its own little subdirectory, and as Helen said, there is a virtual handout for this virtual talk, and that link is available in it. But when you do find it, you are presented, at least today, you are presented with this map. Now, I don't want to sound bitter, but the front page of the Research Wiki has been altered twice since I began putting this talk together, and I had to go back and throw slides away, but I'm not concerned about that. So you jump into the wiki and you select the continent that you want to research. Unfortunately, it doesn't work simply by clicking on the patch of colour, which, as many people would expect these days, you actually have to click on the word Africa. And when you do that, it pops up a subsidiary menu. Now, I've had to magnify that so you can see it, because when I first came to this page and began working on it, I couldn't work out why nothing was happening when I clicked on Africa, because it doesn't matter what continent you choose, the other menu always opens over in Alaska. So once you click on where you want to start, head for Alaska, it lists the countries available in Africa, select South Africa, it opens up another menu which says there's a South African page, and there are 9 other pages which you would recognise probably as the 9 provinces of modern South Africa. So let's choose the whole country and jump in here. And you get an extremely detailed page. This is the top half. There's even more further down when you scroll down. And you notice that at the top of this second page, or the middle if you regard it as a long page, there's a set of links to all of those other pages. So you don't need to go back to the start. once you've chosen the South Africa page, you can get to any of the provinces from within this page. So let's head back up to the top and see what it has available. First thing is this little table of contents down the side. One section dealing with records organised by type, and I think I chose immigration. Yes, I did, and it opens up this page. Now this is where I hope you see the point of my introductory talk about the politics and the time changes. This page sets out where people came from and where they went to depends upon who was in charge at the time, and that will decide where the records are kept. So well worth reading this carefully, drawing yourself up a little timeline to find out the period when your ancestors would be coming in. Next section down talks about background, history, geography and languages. And again, there's a nice potted timeline summary there and some extra resources to go and have a look at to build up that background knowledge that I was arguing we all need. Fourth section at the bottom, local research resources, gives us things like how to locate the archives and the libraries, historical papers, lots of links in there. You could probably spend a couple of hours just working through each of these pages to get a feel for what is available. There's an awful lot. You probably noticed that I skipped over at the top of the table of contents where it says beginning research strategies. Now, surely that's the most relevant to people, but it's also the one page in this wiki where there isn't anything. There's currently no text in this page. So let's jump back and see what else we've got. Notice here under South Africa Research Tools, a number of options. I've picked two to have a look at. A research guide for beginners, which isn't published where it was anymore, but it's been deemed so important by someone that they've captured it in the Internet Archive and provided a link to it. It's quite an old paper, but it's generally regarded as the best place to start if you're looking for researching ancestors in South Africa. And this one, just an individual's web page, but I found it gave me a really nice overall feel. So those two, I think, are well worth looking at. But the big blue button is the key one. South Africa Online Genealogy Records. Click on that and it opens up this page, which you saw a little of before. I think, yep, it scrolls down over two sections. You notice a few things there. There are a lot of dollar signs at the end of titles because they haven't just limited it to the free things. So even subscription sites, if they are relevant, have been marked, so you can decide how you want to get there and use them. Some of the places we can link to, a set of records which is on Family Search itself. So from that page, we can just jump straight through and begin searching an individual collection. And you recall I mentioned the large number of Dutch Reformed churches in the Cape when it was taken over in 1890. And here we see the Dutch Reformed Church records in Stellenbosch archive 1690 to 2011. So a huge collection there. You notice on the bottom of the screen there, the blue line, there are almost 500,000 images there. mention that this same list will provide you links to paid subscription sites. So this will jump you out to Ancestry because it has a very strong collection of South African immigration indexes. Some of them are just plain weird. I very rarely use Geni. It's an online collection, but in this case, it has a very detailed article and timeline and references to where sources are of French Huguenots who emigrated to South Africa. So these, of course, were French Protestants who were being persecuted by the Catholic government of France and therefore were looking for somewhere to go. Many of them, of course, headed into what we now call the Netherlands in Europe, and consequently a number of them headed on to South Africa. This is also a family search set, but you notice it doesn't have a capacity to search because this is an unindexed set. There are 40,000 images from Reformed Church records 1856 to 1988, but no way of searching them. And a little later in the talk, we might return to how we can deal with those. Right, back to our Research Wiki main page. Beside the blue button, we've got the lilac button, lilac, lavender, who knows, called Ask the Community. Click on that and it takes you through to an alphabetical list of groups of people. So click on S for South Africa and it tells us that Family Search has a community just to do with African research, that Family Search Facebook groups, Asia, Africa and Pacific genealogy community, and other groups, German genealogy, our African genealogy, all of those are links on the page that you can follow through and explore. Is this the sort of group that you would want to join in order to advance your search? Right, so that's the top half of the wiki page. When we scroll down, there's a clickable map. And of course, this serves as yet another index to the provincial ones. I think I chose Gauteng, did I? Yes, I did. Which opens up a separate page. This time, instead of trying to give an overview of the whole country, it provides a history of the province. Now you'll notice at the top, you've got the same big blue button, which will take you to records that apply to the whole province, but there's a table of contents there, which I've chosen to hide, but if we show it like that, it indicates what's on this page about just this province. So you could look for, oh yeah, I'm particularly interested in Methodist Church records, and go straight to it. It's an unfortunate feature of these pages that if the contents are open, they actually fit in the space between the big blue button and the heading Historical Overview, which means that all the text is pushed off the screen. And if you don't know that, you might not scroll down and you'll never find all the goodies which are hidden. This is a second one of those 9 provincial pages, the Eastern Cape, map showing where it fits, a little bit of its modern history about how it incorporated some of the homelands which had been set up under the apartheid scheme. But you'll notice right on the bottom of the screen there, a list of cities and towns in the Eastern Cape. And when you click it, you actually leave Family Search and go through to Wikipedia. I think this is a great idea. That why do you make up another list if you know one exists? So the Research Wiki says if you're looking for places in the Eastern Cape, there's a fabulous resource in Wikipedia, and here's how to find it. And we can choose one of those, and for the moment I can't recall the name. Oh, Braunschweig, that's right. We're still in Wikipedia here, and it tells us it's quite an amazing story of a town which quite literally no longer exists. The whole town was picked up and moved, but there's a wonderful Lutheran church behind, and some fantastic photographs if in fact your ancestors came from that area. Ooh, time is flying. Okay, back to our main wiki page, where at the bottom under the various provinces we've got something called More South Africa Research Tools. Now this is a bit of a mixed bag. Some of them extremely useful, like this page from the South African government. Where can I get assistance to trace my ancestry family tree? Sadly, a number of them, simply those links are broken, but you pay your money and you take your choice, I guess. And for those who may have looked at the Research Wiki before, that was the original start page. So if you were expecting to see that, that's been replaced by that multicoloured start page. And just before I pause to take some questions, what's this caper of not having a handout? Well, I have a horror of generating lots of pieces of paper which then finish up in the trash. So what I've done is I've created a little website to support today's presentation. That's a list of its contents. Looking at the time, I'm not going to cover all of those, but I'm confident that those that I don't get to, you will be able to go to the site and work out what you need to know for yourself. And here is one page, an example of the category on e-resources, which provides a link to the State Library of Queensland e-resources collection. A few snapshots there of the sorts of things you can find in the State Library of Queensland. Wonderfully detailed maps from the National Geographic Virtual Library, the Britannica Library with a collection of biographies of famous South Africans, full text articles, scholarly articles from JSTOR. And up at the top, if you don't have a State Library of Queensland membership, I've provided the link that you can sign up and dive in. And as Helen said, when you get your email after this talk asking you to say how wonderful I am, or to tell the truth, whichever you prefer, in that email there will be this link telling you how to get to that virtual handout. Helen, would you like to tell us what questions have come up?
We've got a question, Bob, from Marilyn, asking what about other denominations, please?
Other than Dutch Reformed? Yep. Certainly there are lots of church records listed on that same page. After this little question break, we'll have a quick look at Ancestry, and I think you'll see there are a number of other church records on Ancestry. Yep. Anything else? No? Well, I'll be very unprofessional and have a sip of coffee.
I do have one more question.
Good.
It is from Rick and asking, are you any relation to Heather McAllister, who ran the Ancestry 24 website from South Australia?
No, Rick, I'm not. Have very few direct relations in Australia. My dad arrived from Belfast in 1928 as a small boy, and very few of the McAllisters are we closely related to. So let's just close up that first presentation.
Oh, I've got another couple of questions if you've got time, Bob.
Keep going.
Susan asks, where can we find information of people immigrating from South Africa to Kenya in the years 1900 to 1940-ish?
Whoa, internal migration. That's, as a public servant in a previous life, I would suggest that I'll take that question on notice. Quite frankly, I don't know, but I will see what I can find. And if I can find something, I'll whack up the link on the site. That, I think, is the great advantage of my little virtual handout. When I discover things that I should have done but didn't, I can fix them up afterwards.
And Jan asks, do all provinces have access to BDM records? And where can we find immigration records from Britain to South Australia? South Africa, circa 1883 to 1900. Sorry, two questions there.
Certainly, South Africa is a federation like we are, and so the BDMs are at a provincial level. The catch is, of course, the 9 provinces were only created in their current form in 1994. So you may need to go back through your timeline and sort out which current province covered the area where your ancestors would have been born and track that down. British migration should get a mention in the second half of the talk, and if it doesn't, someone remind me. So how are we doing for time here? Whoa. Well, not as bad as I usually am, but that's not a good thing. So if we quickly, hang on, we'll throw that up and share that. And let's see what the story is. Question, of course, that people ask and you hate answering, which subscription site should I pay for? And the correct answer, of course, well, it depends upon where your ancestors are from, what time they were born, and what type of record you're looking for. But if we limit it to South Africa, it turns out to be pretty clear. This here is the card catalogue of Ancestry, and I'm sure that you know that you go in and search. Card catalogue is the last item that pops down under search, and on the left hand side you can see that you can then filter by country, Africa, South Africa, down to individual province. And here we see that the province, Northern Province, which would be the old Transvaal, there are 31 record sets there, some quite amazing ones. By contrast, when I go into Find My Past and look at the A to Z of record sets, the only references I can find to South Africa are essentially to do with the Boer War or the First World War or this British Royal African Company 1694 to 1743. So Find My Past has virtually no specific South African references. If we look at My Heritage, which is struggling to find its place up against the big two, they have just 4 sets of records in their South African collection. The Dutch Reformed Church registers, interestingly, a very large set of Methodist parish registers, 1822 to 1996. So if you're interested in non-DRK churches, MyHeritage might be the place to go. But in summary, if you are looking specifically for South Africa collections, now there will be references to South Africans in all sorts of other places, but in terms of dedicated collections, Ancestry wins by a mile. And of course, don't forget, at least until the end of this month, you can search Ancestry Library Edition and Find My Past from home for free through the library website. So there's no reason not to jump in there and see what you've got. But let's look quickly back at Family Search again, because it's such a huge collection. Now, this is outside of the wiki now. I've gone into search records, and this is the screen I'm presented with. And there are two ways of getting into them. Well, there are three ways. Just throw in a name and hope on the left-hand side, but that's never really a good strategy. If you want to work with a particular collection, you can click on the map of Africa, just as we did in the Research Wiki, which pops up the same type of sub-menu. Select South Africa. We take it to a South African page, and you'll notice at the bottom of the right-hand side, it says filter by collection. It only shows the most popular 5. So you watch very carefully for that show all and click it, and you will get 25 sets of South African records. And there's those Methodist parish registers popping up again. Church of the Province of South Africa, 1801 to 2004, that would be the Anglican Church by the look of it, I think. So there we have 25 record sets. Second option, at the bottom of the page there, browse all published collections, which takes us to a list of all 2,836 collections in Family Search, but with filters on the left-hand side. If we click on Africa, we reduce that to 42. And if we then click on South Africa, we've got it down to 29 collections. So, we can focus it down even more then by saying, well, show me probate and court records. We can filter it even more if we like by choosing a time. So what we have here are two paths. Click on the map, click on the catalogue, you finish up in the same place. Well, not exactly. One path tells you there are 29 collections. The other shows 25. What's the discrepancy? Well, the discrepancy is that there are some collections that can't be searched. There are 4 collections, in fact, that can't be searched, so they don't show up on the on one path, and they have browse images, and we'll spend a little time looking at some of those later because they're particularly interesting. I think we might skip a section. What I've skipped over is portals and lists, which is sad because I love it, but if we've got time, we'll come back to it at the end, and if we haven't, it's very comprehensively treated in the handout. So this image-only collection. When you search in Family Search, you're all very familiar with running a search. On the left-hand side, you see the transcription and then view the original document. Sometimes, of course, the image isn't available, or you need to go out to Ancestry or Find My Past to see it. No, that's not so good. But there's a third set, such as this one, which has images only. And this is a description from the Research Wiki. When we go in there, we see no place to enter a name, no index to search. So how do we use them? You've got a link there called Browse through 40,337 images. Click on it and it opens this up and says, where do you want to browse in this Reformed Church records? Well, I'm interested in Natal. So I'll click on that. And in fact, I had to click on Natal a couple of times to finish up looking at the records for Pietermaritzburg, 1856 to 1988. And you see, just above the blank screen, I've got a choice of baptisms and christenings, marriages, or church memberships. I'm looking for a marriage, so we'll click on that one. And it opens up just 67 records. So while it said I'm going to browse through 40,000, the filtering system lets me reduce it down. And here we have an image of the original marriage register. As we say, it's got 67 records there from the original 40,000. We have back and forward arrows, so we can click and move forward, simply flipping pages if you like. We can also enter a number directly. So if I typed in 45, I can jump through to the 45th record. Why would I want to jump forward backwards like that? Because they are in numerical order or date order. So if I know roughly when the marriage I was interested in could take place, then I can flip through. There's another icon we can choose there, which says, would you like to see all the pages at one time? Well, it's not enormously useful, but some people like to use this by magnifying the screen up. And in essence, what you're doing is flipping through the pages of the book quickly to find the one you want. And here we have 13th of December 1952, a marriage that I'm looking for. Notice that the form is bilingual. Everything is written twice in Afrikaans on the top line and English underneath, except of course the handwritten bits. Because this is an Afrikaans speaking family, they haven't provided a translation for things like occupation. But remember, the Research Wiki said that I could download an Afrikaans genealogical word list. It's about 12 pages, I think. Very, very useful. Alphabetical order, little mini dictionary. Have it beside you while you're browsing. Fabulous resource. So here, although there's no index for this document, I have the information that Hendrik Petrus Breutenbach got married 30th of December 1952 and he was 21 years of age. So if I now leave this for the moment and jump out and find a person, copy the information across, seems like a pointless exercise, of course, because we knew, or we were told, this hadn't been indexed. What I'm looking for now is, are there any other records for Hendrik that have been indexed? And wonderfully, in the shared family tree, there we have the marriage of Hendrik. Ooh. We can go in there. Here he was born in 32, so he was approximately 21 years of age. You notice across the top it says there are no sources attached to this. Now, that of course is a terrible thing for any family historian to see. Someone's built a tree with no sources. But because I've just found a source, why don't I jump back to it and look up at the top right corner, attach it to the family tree. I can create a source. I can, in the notes I've transcribed there. Next thing I need to do is select a person And because I'm logged into Family Search, it has remembered that the last person I was looking at was Hendrik Breitenbach, so I choose him. And now the document that was previously sitting in an unindexed collection is attached to Hendrik Breitenbach. If someone searches for him, they can now go directly into that unindexed image collection. If we look at it, here it is. If you open the source, notice index information. This record has not yet been indexed. View the original document. Now, in my noble ambitions for this talk, I then continued on and attached the same document to his wife. But since we're running out of time, we might jump ahead. And, yep, how are we doing for... Oh, they're not terribly late. Okay. I was a terrible skeptic about YouTube. You know, it's just full of silly cat videos and things. But in fact, if you go into YouTube, you can search. And here I've gone into YouTube and I've searched for South Africa in quotes and family history in quotes. So I want those exact terms because I don't want Africa family or South history or anything like that. Naturally, we get a bunch of ads, but we can trim them out and just magnify up what we're looking for. And an interesting thing happens. The top choices for YouTube videos on South African family history, all made by the same guy. Let's go through and have a look. This is his channel. You see that he has a range of programs there. He has 1,000 subscribers, so he must be doing something right. When we look at the list of videos he's put up, some of them are just general family history stuff. Some of them are highly specific to his South African ancestors, but often he's illustrating points about his search for his family, so that right in the middle of the screen there we can see a 16-minute video called South African Genealogy, a Case Study. And I must admit to getting somewhat distracted by that whilst preparing this talk. But there's Matthew's YouTube channel, and again, it's in the handout. If you want to follow that up. And astonishingly, Helen, I have come very close to time. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks, everyone.